The ship came down over Orlando on the second night of the AKC National Championship, and the Dominion Scout Commander believed he had found the weakest defense network on the entire planet. Thousands of beings gathered in one building, no visible weapons, no military formation, just rows of cages, plastic crates, and small four-legged creatures being walked in circles on leashes. His scanners called it a livestock processing center. He was wrong. He had landed in the middle of the most disciplined, most fearless, most relentlessly focused army on Earth, and it had fur, fangs, and zero concept of retreat. Within 1 hour, his entire unit would be outmaneuvered by a 70-pound German shepherd named Justice. If you want to see an alien empire get humbled by a show dog with a perfect stack and a killer instinct, smash that like button, hit subscribe. And drop a comment telling me which breed you think could survive an alien invasion. Now let's step inside the arena, because the countdown to first contact has already begun. The Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida was packed wall to wall with the best dogs in the country. It was the final week of December, and the AKC National Championship was in full swing. Thousands of handlers, judges, breeders, and dog lovers filled the massive halls, surrounded by grooming tables, crate setups, vendor booths selling leashes and treats, and the constant hum of blow dryers fluffing out coats for the ring. Commander Hank Doyle stood near the security office on the lower level, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. Hank was a retired Air Force pilot turned head of event security, a calm, broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a buzz cut going gray at the temples. He had worked dozens of these shows. Nothing ever happened beyond a lost wallet or an overly aggressive poodle owner arguing with a judge. In Ring 8, a young handler named Casey Brennan was running last-minute drills with her German shepherd, Justice. Justice was a 3-year-old male, sleek black and tan, with a deep chest, alert ears, and eyes that tracked every movement in the room like he was reading a tactical map. Casey had raised him since he was 8 weeks old. He was not just a competitor to her, he was her partner. "Last call for the herding group," the announcer's voice rang out over the speakers. "Handlers, please proceed to Ring 8. Casey knelt down and looked Justice in the eyes. "We've trained for this our whole lives, buddy. Let's show them what a real working dog looks like." Justice answered with a low, steady breath through his nose, the kind of sound that meant he was locked in. What none of them knew was that 30 miles above the Earth's atmosphere, a small Dominion reconnaissance vessel had been quietly orbiting the planet for 6 days, scanning population centers for what their mission briefing called soft infiltration zones. Subcaptain Vex Thuron, a tall gray-skinned officer with narrow black eyes and a reputation for cold efficiency, had been assigned the task of identifying the easiest location on Earth to begin a controlled ground incursion. His scanners flagged Orlando almost immediately. Massive enclosed structure, thousands of organic life forms in close proximity, minimal visible weaponry, low average threat signature. And strangely, hundreds of smaller four-legged creatures moving among the larger ones in tightly controlled patterns. "This is a processing facility," Vex said to his second-in-command, a soldier named Corin. "The smaller organisms appear to be either livestock or some form of biological tool used by the larger ones for labor." Corin studied the readout. "Sir, the smaller organisms show heightened neural activity. Some readings are nearly matching the larger humans." Vex dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Irrelevant. We land, we secure a foothold, we identify their command structure, and we begin assessment for full invasion. This world has shown no orbital defense capability. It will be the easiest territory the Dominion has ever claimed." He had no idea he was about to walk directly into the middle of the AKC National Championship. Surrounded by the most obedience-trained, drive-driven, handler-loyal animals on the entire planet. The shuttle began its descent just after 8 in the evening, cloaked in a low-frequency shimmer that human radar read as nothing more than minor atmospheric interference. It touched down in the parking structure attached to the convention center. Nestled quietly between a row of dually trucks with dog show magnets on the doors, and a horse trailer someone had converted into a mobile grooming van. Vex stepped out first, his human disguise engaging automatically, smoothing his gray skin into a pale human tone, his narrow eyes rounding slightly. His armor folding into a plain black jacket and cargo pants. Behind him came 4 soldiers, each one taking on a similarly unremarkable human appearance. To anyone walking past, they looked like 4 guys in matching black jackets who had wandered in from the parking lot. "Proceed with caution," Vex said through the squad comm link. "Identify command personnel. Avoid open conflict until we understand their defense capability." They moved through the loading doors and into the lower concourse, where the noise hit them first. Barking, not scattered, panicked barking, but a layered wall of sound, deep and sharp, coming from hundreds of directions at once. Vex's translator struggled to process it, briefly flashing the words "unidentified vocal weapon system" across his internal display before correcting itself to domestic canine vocalization. Corin froze near a row of crates stacked 3 high, each one holding an alert, watchful dog staring directly at him. "Commander, these creatures are tracking our movement. They are restrained," Vex said. "Continue." But as they pushed deeper into the hall, past grooming stations and vendor booths selling rhinestone collars and orthopedic dog beds, every single dog they passed turned its head to watch them go by. Not one of them barked at first. They just watched, ears up, eyes locked, the way a soldier watches an unfamiliar vehicle roll through a checkpoint. Vex did not understand it yet, but he had just walked into a building filled with thousands of animals bred for generations to detect exactly one thing better than almost any creature on Earth. Something that did not belong. And somewhere in Ring 8, Justice's ears suddenly lifted, his nose lifted into the air, and a low growl built in his chest that Casey had never heard from him before. Casey felt Justice's body shift beside her, his weight settling lower, his ears rotating like satellite dishes toward the concourse entrance. "Hey, what's wrong, bud?" she whispered, running a hand down his back. He did not relax. If anything, he leaned harder into his stance, the way he did during protection training when a decoy stepped out from behind a barrier. She glanced toward the entrance and saw nothing unusual, just 4 men in black jackets walking briskly through the crowd, the kind of guys who could be vendors, security, or lost dads looking for the restroom. Nothing about them screamed danger to a human eye. But Justice was not reading them with human eyes. 3 rings over, a Belgian Malinois named Raptor exploded into a fit of barking, so sudden that his handler nearly dropped the leash. In Ring 12, a normally calm Doberman backed against his crate, hackles raised in a straight ridge down his spine. Within 90 seconds, nearly every working and herding breed in the lower hall had shifted into some version of alert posture, even though the source of their concern was simply walking past. Not even looking at them. Hank Doyle noticed it from his post near the security office. 20 years around dog shows had taught him that a sudden wave of alerting like this almost never meant nothing. He keyed his radio. "All security personnel, we've got unusual canine behavior across multiple rings. Probably nothing, but stay sharp and watch the lower concourse." Vex, walking briskly with his squad, picked up the radio chatter through a translation filter built into his disguise. "They are responding to something," he muttered. "Corin, status on the smaller organisms. Increasing vocalization, increasing alert posture, Commander. I am detecting what may be coordinated behavior. They cannot be coordinated. They are tethered to handlers. They have no command structure." That was Vex's first mistake, and it would not be his last. He had assumed that obedience meant the absence of intelligence, the same mistake every overconfident invader makes when they study a species from orbit instead of standing in the room with them. The squad reached a quieter service hallway near the grooming area, intending to find a maintenance closet to establish a temporary forward base. Instead, they walked directly past Ring 8, where Casey was finishing her warm-up pattern with Justice before her turn in the ring. Justice stopped mid-stride. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He simply turned his head, locked his eyes on Vex, and went completely, unnervingly still. The kind of stillness that experienced handlers know means a dog has stopped thinking about the leash and started thinking about the threat. Vex felt it before he understood why. A strange pressure, like being watched by something that had already decided what it was going to do about him. He glanced toward the dog out of pure reflex. The human disguise software in his mind insisting this was a domesticated animal incapable of threatening a Dominion soldier. For a half-second his disguise flickered, just barely. A faint shimmer along his jawline, gone almost as soon as it appeared, the kind of glitch a tired human eye would dismiss as bad lighting. Justice did not dismiss it. He let out a single, sharp bark, deep and final, the kind of bark trainers call an alert bark, the one that means a working dog has identified something the handler needs to know about right now. Casey's stomach dropped. In 3 years, Justice had never barked like that in public, not once, not even during decoy work. "Justice Platts," she said quietly, giving the down command out of habit, but he did not break eye contact with the man in the black jacket walking past the ring barrier. Vex moved faster, putting distance between himself and the dog, signaling his squad to follow. "We are leaving this section," he said through the comm. "Establish base elsewhere." They found an unlocked door marked staff only near the back hallway and slipped inside, finding themselves in a narrow storage room lined with folding tables. Extra ring gates and boxes of show programs. Vex shut the door and exhaled, his disguise stabilizing again. "Report," he said. "What just happened?" Corin checked his scanner. "Commander, that organism detected an anomaly in your disguise projection. A 0.03-second visual fluctuation. That is impossible for a creature of that intelligence level to register. Sir, I am also reading something else." Corin's voice lowered. "These creatures are not simply tools. Their neural patterns show extremely high levels of training, discipline, and bonded loyalty to the larger humans. In Dominion terms, they would be classified as a fully operational auxiliary force." Vex stared at the door, beyond which the muffled barking still echoed through the hall. "An auxiliary force," he repeated slowly, "made of small, four-legged organisms with no weapons and no armor. Yes, Commander, that is absurd." It was not absurd. It was about to become the single biggest miscalculation of his career. Outside the storage room, Casey had already pulled Justice from the warm-up area and was kneeling beside him, checking him over, confused, but trusting his instincts enough not to ignore them. "What did you see, buddy?" she whispered. Hank Doyle approached a moment later, radio in hand. "Everything okay over here? We're getting reports from 3 different rings." "Dogs are acting like they spotted an intruder." Casey looked toward the staff hallway where the men in black jackets had disappeared. "I don't know what it is, Hank. But Justice has never been wrong about anything in his life." Hank followed her gaze toward the hallway, and for the first time that night. The easy confidence in his expression cracked just slightly. "Let's find out what he saw," he said, already reaching for the door. Behind that door, 4 alien soldiers were about to learn that on this planet, the most advanced detection system was not radar. It was a dog. Hank pushed open the staff door slowly, flashlight beam sweeping across the dark storage room. Empty. Folding tables stacked against one wall, boxes of programs, a rack of extra leashes donated for the rescue raffle. No sign of the 4 men Casey had described. "Maybe they were just lost," Hank said, though something in his gut told him otherwise. 20 years of military instinct does not disappear just because someone hands you a radio and a polo shirt with a convention center logo on it. What neither of them realized was that the storage room had a second door on the far side, leading into a connecting hallway that looped behind the main rings and out toward the loading dock. Vex and his squad had already moved through it, slipping past unnoticed while staff wheeled carts of bottled water down the corridor. "We need a position with better observation," Vex said, leading his squad up a service stairwell toward the catwalk level above the main arena floor, an area normally reserved for lighting technicians and event staff. From there, they could see the entire championship floor spread out below them, ring after ring, thousands of dogs and handlers moving through their routines under the bright show lights. "This is the command center," Vex said, studying the layout. "Note the structure. Smaller groups divided by perimeter barriers, each with a designated handler directing movement. This is a controlled labor distribution system." Corin adjusted his scanner. "Sir, I'm picking up encrypted communication on multiple frequencies." "The judge's scoring tablets," Vex said, nodding slowly, mistaking wireless scoring software for a military command network. This is more organized than our initial assessment suggested. We need to identify their primary decision-maker. Down on the floor, Justice had not settled. Casey kept him on a short lead near the rings, watching him scan the catwalk above with the same intensity he gave to scent work during training. Hank stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes following the same direction. "You said he went still, then barked once, then wouldn't break eye contact," Hank said. "That's not normal alerting behavior," Casey said. "That's threat assessment. He does that during decoy drills right before he commits to an engagement." Hank's radio crackled. One of his junior security staff, a young man named Tyler, reported something strange near the loading dock. "Hank, you're gonna want to see this. There's a vehicle back here that doesn't match anything on our parking manifest. No plates, no reflection off the surface like normal paint. It's just sitting here." Hank and Casey made their way toward the loading dock, Justice walking tight at Casey's side, head low, eyes scanning every shadow along the corridor. As they rounded the corner, they saw it. A sleek dark shape tucked between a horse trailer and a box truck, its surface shimmering faintly under the dock lights, edges slightly blurred like heat distortion on a summer road. "That is not a car," Hank said quietly. Justice's reaction was immediate and absolute. He planted his feet, dropped his head, and unleashed a deep, continuous bark, the kind reserved for full threat engagement. The kind that meant in his training he had identified an active danger and was prepared to act on it without hesitation. "Justice Platts," Casey said firmly, but for the first time in his life, Justice did not lie down. He held his ground, body coiled, eyes locked on the shimmering shape, every instinct in his body screaming that something on the other side of that strange surface did not belong on this planet. Up on the catwalk, Vex's scanner lit up red. "Commander, our shuttle has been detected by ground personnel." Vex's jaw tightened. "By the humans?" "No, sir," Corin hesitated. "By the K9? Vex stared down at the small black and tan animal standing rigid near his shuttle, refusing to back down despite two armed humans standing uncertainly beside it, with nothing more than a radio and a leash. For the first time since landing on Earth, something cold and unfamiliar moved through Vex's chest. It was not fear exactly. It was the dawning realization that his carefully gathered intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. "That creature has now compromised our extraction point," Vex said. "We move to Phase 2. Identify and neutralize the primary command authority before this incident escalates." Below, Hank was already on the radio, voice steady despite the strange shimmer he could not explain. "All units lock down the loading dock, nobody in or out, and somebody get me eyes on whoever owns that vehicle. Because I do not think it belongs to anybody in this building." Casey knelt beside Justice, one hand steady on his shoulder, the other gripping the leash tighter than she ever had before. "Okay, buddy," she whispered. "I believe you. Now show me what we're dealing with." Justice did not look away from the shuttle once. 3 floors above them, Vex gave the order that would change everything. "Engage disguise protocols. We descend, we secure the human commander, and we silence that animal before it draws any more attention." The countdown to outright chaos had officially begun. And the only creature on the entire convention center floor who fully understood the danger standing among them was a German shepherd named Justice, who had no intention of standing down. Vex and his squad moved down from the catwalk through a side stairwell, disguises fully engaged, expressions arranged into the kind of bland, harmless smiles humans use when they want to avoid suspicion. It almost worked on the humans. It did not work on the dogs. The moment the 4 men stepped back onto the main concourse, a ripple of alert behavior spread through the hall faster than any announcement system could have managed. A Rottweiler in Ring 3 let out a single sharp warning bark. A pair of Dutch shepherds near the grooming area both turned in perfect unison toward the stairwell door. Even a normally laid-back Bernese mountain dog lifted his head from his nap on a cooling mat and stared. "Sir," Corin said quietly, "multiple organisms are now displaying alert behavior simultaneously." "Ignore them," Vex snapped, though his voice carried less confidence than before. "They are restrained. They cannot act without their handler's permission." That, too, was about to be proven wrong. Hank had pulled together 4 of his security staff near the loading dock. forming a loose perimeter around the shimmering shuttle without fully understanding what they were guarding against. Casey stood just behind them with Justice, who had not stopped staring down the corridor toward the stairwell since the moment the alert began. "There," Casey said suddenly, pointing as 4 men in black jackets emerged from the stairwell door and began walking with deliberate, unhurried steps directly toward the loading dock. Justice's entire body shifted into focus, weight low, ears forward, tail still. Casey recognized the posture instantly. It was the exact stance he used right before committing to a bite during protection sport training, the moment when a dog stops considering options and locks onto a single decision. "Hank," Casey said, voice tight, "those are the guys." Hank stepped forward, raising a hand. "Gentlemen, this is a restricted area. I'm going to need you to stop right there and tell me what business you have back here." Vex stopped a few feet away, studying Hank with cold, calculating eyes hidden behind a friendly human face. "We are with Event Logistics," he said smoothly, his translator selecting the most plausible human explanation available. "Checking on a delivery vehicle. Funny," Hank said, "because that thing doesn't match anything on our manifest. And it sure as hell doesn't look like any delivery truck I've ever seen." The tension between them stretched tight as a drawn wire. Then Justice broke it. He lunged forward against the leash with a force that nearly pulled Casey off her feet, a deep, furious bark erupting from his chest as he focused entirely on Vex, not the other 3 soldiers. But Vex specifically, the one whose disguise had flickered earlier in the night. Vex's composure cracked. "Control your animal," he said sharply, stepping back half a pace despite his greater size and strength, an instinctive retreat his training had never prepared him for. "He doesn't usually act like this," Casey said, struggling to hold Justice steady, "which tells me he's seeing something the rest of us aren't." Corin leaned toward Vex, voice low and urgent through the squad comm. "Commander, the disguise integrity is fluctuating under stress. If that creature continues this level of aggression, our cover may fail entirely." Vex made a decision in that moment that he would later regret with the full weight of military disgrace. "Sedate it," he said quietly to the soldier beside him. "Quietly." Now, the soldier reached into his jacket for a small device disguised as a phone, a low-frequency neural suppressor designed to disable smaller organic threats without alerting larger ones. He raised it toward Justice. What he did not account for was that Justice had spent 3 years training specifically to react to sudden hand movements directed at himself or his handler. The moment the device came up, years of decoy training fired in an instant. Justice did not wait for a command. He drove forward with explosive force, leash snapping taut, and closed the distance in under a second. Jaws locking onto the soldier's forearm with the same precision and commitment he had shown on a padded training sleeve 100 times before. The soldier's disguise failed completely under the stress, gray skin and narrow black eyes flashing into view for a full 2 seconds before flickering back. Long enough for every human standing nearby to see something that should not have existed. Hank's coffee cup hit the floor, Casey's breath caught in her throat. And somewhere behind them, a phone camera that had been recording a casual video of dogs in their crates suddenly captured something that would be uploaded to the internet within the hour, setting off a chain of events no one in that building could have predicted. "That," Hank said slowly, staring at the soldier's now human face once more, "was not security footage I expected to see tonight." Vex realized in that instant that his careful, controlled infiltration had collapsed in less than 4 minutes, undone entirely by a single German shepherd refusing to let go of his soldier's arm. "Fall back," Vex barked at his squad, abandoning subtlety entirely. "Full retreat to the shuttle." But Justice was not finished. He released the soldier's arm only when Casey gave the command, then planted himself directly between the aliens and their shuttle, head low, growl rolling steady and deep, blocking their only path to extraction. For the first time in Dominion military history, an advance team's retreat was being personally obstructed by a single, furious, 70-pound dog who had absolutely no intention of standing down. Vex stood frozen at the edge of the loading dock, staring at the dog blocking his only path to the shuttle. Every instinct told him to push forward, to use force, To simply walk past the animal the way he would walk past any minor obstacle on any of the 17 worlds his unit had previously subdued. But something about the way Justice held his ground, utterly unafraid, completely committed, made Vex hesitate in a way he had never hesitated before. "Move," Vex said, more to himself than to the dog, as if saying it would make it true. Justice did not move. Hank had already radioed for additional security, but more importantly, he had radioed something else entirely. "This is Doyle at the loading dock. I need someone to call this in to local law enforcement, and I need it now. We have unidentified individuals back here, and I just watched one of their faces do something I can't explain on a normal radio call." Casey, still gripping Justice's leash with both hands, watched the standoff with her heart pounding. "Hank," she said quietly, "I don't think these are regular people." "No kidding," Hank muttered, eyes fixed on the soldier whose disguise had flickered. His bitten forearm now held protectively against his chest. Vex made his final calculation. 4 soldiers, 1 injured, 1 extraction point blocked by a hostile organism, and a growing crowd of humans now recording the situation on their phones from a safe distance, drawn by the commotion. Every second of delay increased the risk of full exposure, the one outcome the Dominion's protocols explicitly forbade during a reconnaissance mission. "Corin," Vex said, voice tight, "prepare the shuttle for emergency departure." "We are leaving. Sir, the animal is directly between us and the loading ramp. Then we go around it." They attempted to circle wide, moving along the edge of the dock toward the shuttle's rear access point. Justice tracked them every step of the way, positioning himself constantly between the soldiers and their goal, the same way he had been trained to control a decoy's movement during bite work drills. Cutting off angles, forcing hesitation, never allowing a clean path through. "This creature is exhibiting tactical positioning," Corin said, disbelief evident even through the translator. "It is hurting us, Commander." It was, in fact, exactly what Justice was doing. Herding was bred into German shepherds over more than a century. The instinct to control movement, block gaps, and direct larger animals exactly where a handler wanted them to go. No one in that parking structure, alien or human, fully grasped that the same instinct used to move sheep through a gate was now being used to corner 4 extraterrestrial soldiers against the side of their own shuttle. Casey realized it almost the same moment Corin said it aloud. "He's hurting them," she whispered. "Hank, he's actually hurting them." "Then let's help him close the gate," Hank said, already moving to block the only remaining open path along the side of the dock. Joined quickly by Tyler and 2 other staff members who had no idea what they were dealing with, but understood enough to know these men needed to be stopped. Vex felt the walls closing in, both literal and tactical. His soldiers were boxed against the shuttle, a growing crowd of humans watching from a safe distance, phones raised. And one extremely determined dog refusing to allow a single clean step toward escape. In a moment of pure desperation, Vex made his second critical error of the night. He reached for his sidearm, a compact disruptor disguised as nothing more than a black multi-tool, intending to fire a low-level stun pulse to clear a path. Justice saw the movement before Vex's hand had even fully cleared his jacket. He launched forward one final time, not at Vex's arm but directly at his chest, driving the alien commander backward into the side of the shuttle, with enough force to knock the disguised weapon from his grip entirely, sending it skittering across the concrete floor, where Hank scooped it up without hesitation. "Nobody pulls a weapon in my building," Hank said, voice low and dangerous, holding the strange device like he had handled 100 unfamiliar firearms in his Air Force days, because he had. Vex stared up from the ground at the dog now standing over him, teeth bared, utterly unwilling to back down, and in that moment the cold, calculating Dominion subcaptain felt something he had never reported in any official log during his entire career. He felt afraid of a dog. Sirens echoed faintly from outside the convention center as local police units, alerted by Hank's call, began arriving in the parking structure. Vex understood with sudden, brutal clarity that this mission was over, not delayed, not compromised, but completely, irreversibly finished. "Emergency extraction," he said into his calm voice, shaking slightly for the first time. "All units, immediate retreat." Authorize emergency lift. The shuttle's ramp sealed shut behind the soldiers as they scrambled aboard, Justice barking furiously at the closing hatch until the very last possible second. Refusing to stand down even as the vehicle's shimmer intensified, and it lifted silently off the ground. Rising up through the open top level of the parking structure and vanishing into the night sky within seconds. Silence fell over the loading dock. Hank stood holding an alien weapon he did not understand. Casey knelt beside Justice, breathing hard, running both hands over his sides, checking for injuries he did not have. And somewhere above Florida, a Dominion shuttle climbed desperately back toward orbit, carrying 4 soldiers who had just been outmaneuvered, outpositioned, and thoroughly defeated by a single German shepherd with a perfect herding instinct and 0 patience for intruders. "Good boy," Casey whispered, voice shaking. "Good boy, Justice," but high above the planet, on the Dominion command vessel waiting in orbit. The mission's failure was about to trigger something far larger than anyone on the convention center floor could have imagined. The debrief aboard the Dominion command vessel did not go well for Subcaptain Vex Thuron. He stood before the High Commander, a towering, ancient officer named Drassel, who had personally overseen the subjugation of more than 30 worlds across known space. Vex's report, translated and replayed for the Council, showed grainy footage of a German shepherd cornering 4 armed soldiers against their own shuttle. "Explain this," Drassel said, voice flat and dangerous. "The local population maintains a fully trained auxiliary force," Vex said, choosing his words carefully. "Small in stature, but possessing combat instincts, tactical positioning ability, and absolute loyalty to their human commanders. We were detected, cornered, and disarmed by a single unit." "A single unit," Drassel repeated. "Yes, Commander, designation German Shepherd. Apparently bred for generations specifically for this purpose." The council chamber fell into stunned silence. One elder finally spoke. "You are telling us that this world maintains a standing army of 4-legged sentries so well trained that a single soldier nearly captured an armed Dominion officer." Vex straightened his posture. "I am telling you that our reconnaissance failed to account for the fact that this species did not simply tame animals for labor. They built partnerships with creatures bred across centuries specifically for protection, detection, and combat support. We assumed weakness. We found a fully operational, decentralized defense network hiding in plain sight, disguised as a dog competition." Drassel studied the footage one final time. Watching Justice plant himself between the soldiers and their shuttle, refusing every attempt to pass. "Reclassify this world," he said finally. "Earth is not a soft target, mark it as protected territory. Until we understand the full scope of this auxiliary force, no further incursions will be authorized." Back on Earth, the footage from that night spread quickly online. Though most viewers assumed it was an elaborate prank or a viral marketing stunt for the championship itself. Casey Brennan never spoke publicly about what she truly believed she had seen that night, but she never doubted Justice again, not for a single second. Justice went on to compete in Ring 8 just 2 hours later, slightly disheveled but utterly focused, and placed at the very top of the herding group. A result that felt almost laughably small compared to what he had actually accomplished earlier that evening. Casey knelt beside him afterward, gold ribbon in hand, and whispered the only thing that felt true enough to say. "You didn't just win tonight, buddy. You saved every single one of us. And you didn't even need a command to do it." Hank Doyle kept the strange device he had picked up off the parking structure floor locked in his personal safe for years afterward. Never quite sure what to do with it, never quite able to explain it to anyone who would believe him. Every December, when the championship rolled back around, he made it a point to walk the loading dock one more time before opening night, just in case. Years later, when 2 more reconnaissance attempts were made on Earth by other distant powers scouting for weakness, the Dominion intercepted both before they ever reached the atmosphere. When one enemy commander demanded to know why such effort was being spent protecting a primitive, disorganized planet, the Dominion's response was short, direct, and absolute. "That world is not primitive. That world trains soldiers from birth, embeds them within every population center on the planet, and equips them with instincts no scanner can fully predict." We do not yet understand their full numbers. Until we do, Earth remains under protection. What none of the alien councils across multiple systems ever fully grasped was the simplest truth of all. Humanity had not built an army to defend the planet. They had built partnerships, generation after generation, with animals who loved them without condition and protected them without hesitation, expecting nothing in return but loyalty given just as freely. Every December, the AKC National Championship still fills the Orange County Convention Center with thousands of dogs and handlers. The same controlled chaos, the same bright lights, the same nervous energy before each class steps into the ring. Most people walking through those doors have no idea how close the world once came to a very different kind of headline, or how a single German shepherd's instincts changed the outcome entirely. Somewhere out past the edge of the solar system, Earth remains quietly marked as protected territory, not because of any fleet, any weapon, or any government decision, but because of one good dog who refused to let four strangers walk past his handler without a fight. And every year when the lights go up and the announcer calls the next breed into the ring, somewhere in that building, a working dog lifts his head, scans the room out of pure instinct, and stands ready just in case. If this story gave you chills, drop a comment below telling me what breed you think would make the best planetary defender. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next story. And share this video with anyone who loves dogs as much as they love a good sci-fi twist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.